She stood at the edge of the garden, her heart pounding as guests laughed and danced around her. Just hours ago, Zua had begged her father not to remarry. She had sensed something wasn't right. But now, as she stood behind a tree, she overheard him laughing with his new wife, saying, "I only married her for the money." The words pierced her like glass. In that moment, she realized this wedding wasn't about love. It was a deal. But what neither her father nor his bride knew was that Zua had her own secret. And by the time the night ended, it wouldn't be the bride leaving in white. It would be the truth, walking away in flames. Zua was only 19 and still trying to heal after losing her mother just a year ago. Life hadn't been the same without her, and every corner of their home still held memories of her mother's love. So, when her father, Temi, suddenly announced that he was getting married again, Zua couldn't believe her ears. Even worse, the woman he planned to marry, Lona, was much younger, barely older than Zua herself. Something about it felt wrong, too soon, too strange. Her father said it was love, but Zua could see past the smiles. Lona was always too perfect, too sweet, and her eyes never seemed to match her words. Zua's heart sank. Her father was moving on, but it felt like he was leaving her behind, and something deep inside told her that this new marriage was not what it seemed. Zua didn't keep quiet. As soon as her father told her about the wedding, she tried everything to stop him. She didn't just cry or argue. She showed him real proof. One evening, she walked into his study with her phone in her hand, her face pale and serious. "Daddy, please listen to me," she said softly. She opened her phone and showed him text messages she had seen on Lona's phone by accident. Messages to someone named Kay that said things like, "He's falling for it," and "Soon we'll have access to the funds." Zua's hands trembled as she scrolled through them. She also brought out a few receipts she had picked up from the trash, expensive jewelry, hotel stays, and money transfer, all paid from her father's account, but never mentioned by him. One of them showed a huge purchase from a luxury store just days after her father had told her they needed to cut back on spending. Then she showed him the bank alert she had seen on his phone, a large amount of money transferred to a strange account. It didn't make sense. Zua's voice cracked as she begged, "Daddy, I'm not trying to ruin your happiness, but something is wrong. Please don't marry her yet." But instead of listening, Temi frowned and shook his head. "You're just jealous," he said. "You don't want to see me happy. You're acting like a child." Zua stood there, frozen, her heart dropped. The man who once read her bedtime stories and hugged her when she cried was now looking at her like she was the enemy. No matter what she said, he refused to believe her. He thought she was making it all up. He thought she was afraid of change. And just like that, her warnings were ignored and the wedding plans continued. At first, Lona looked perfect to everyone. She smiled at guests, helped Temi with the wedding plans, and always spoke in a soft, polite voice. She even brought Zua little gifts and called her sweetheart in front of others. But Zua wasn't fooled. She could see the truth behind the fake kindness. When no one was watching, Lona's eyes changed. There was a coldness in them, and her smile disappeared the moment others looked away. Zua began noticing things, small but strange. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, Lona would step outside to make long phone calls, speaking in a low voice and laughing in a way that didn't feel right. Once, Zua quietly followed her and heard her say, "He's almost ready. Just a little longer." Zua's heart pounded. Who was Lona talking to? What was she planning? Lona also started acting like the house belonged to her. She changed the furniture, removed Zua's mother's pictures from the walls and said, "We need a fresh start." But Zua knew what that really meant. Lona wanted to erase her mother's memory. She even moved Zua's room to the back of the house, claiming it was for privacy. Zua could feel it. Step by step, Lona was pushing her out. She did it with a smile, always pretending to be thoughtful, but every action said the opposite. Even when Zua tried to help, Lona would make comments like, "You're too young to understand," or "This is between grown-ups." Slowly, Zua was being made to feel like a stranger in her own home. She couldn't talk to her father. He was completely under Lona's spell, and everyone else thought Lona was an angel. But Zua saw the truth. This bride wore a mask, and behind it was someone who didn't want love. She wanted control. The wedding day was bright, and the garden was filled with music, laughter, and fancy decorations. Everyone looked happy, clapping and taking pictures as Zua's father and Lona smiled for the cameras. But Zua didn't feel happy. She forced a smile through the ceremony, her heart heavy and her mind full of doubt. She still didn't trust Lona, and deep down, she felt something was wrong. After the cake was cut and the dancing started, Zua stepped outside to get some fresh air. Her head was spinning and her chest felt tight. She walked behind a flower-covered wall near the edge of the garden where it was quiet, but then she heard voices, familiar ones. She stopped, held her breath and listened closely. It was her father and Lona. They didn't know anyone was nearby. Temi's voice was calm, almost proud. "Don't worry," he said. "I only married you for the investment deal. We both win." Zua's eyes widened. Her heart dropped. Then Lona laughed. Not her sweet fake laugh, but a loud, wicked one. "I told you this would work," she said. "Soon we'll have everything." Zua stood frozen behind the wall. Her hands were shaking. Her father didn't marry Lona for love, and Lona wasn't marrying him for love either. It was all about money, a deal, a scam wrapped in flowers, music, and fake smiles. The wedding, the dress, the vows. It was all a lie. Tears filled Zua's eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. She didn't want to cry. She wanted to remember this moment clearly. Her heart was broken, yes, but now she knew the truth. It wasn't just Lona who betrayed her. It was her own father too. The man who once told her that love was everything had traded it for a business plan. And the worst part? They were both laughing about it. Zua stood quietly behind the flower wall, her father's words still echoing in her ears. "I only married you for the investment deal." She couldn't believe it. But then, as she stared into the night sky, everything started to come together like a puzzle. Her mind traveled back to the days after her mother passed away. That time had been hard. Her world had felt empty, her heart broken. Her father, once warm and protective, began to change. He became distant, colder, like a different man. He stayed out late, stopped asking about her day, and rarely smiled. Then Lona appeared. She came into their lives quietly, introduced as an old family friend who wanted to help them heal. Zua had been unsure at first. Lona was beautiful, polite, always smiling, but something about her felt too perfect, too planned. At first she helped with small things, cooking, cleaning, even bringing gifts. Zua thought maybe her father just needed comfort, but slowly Lona's presence grew. She took control of the house, made decisions without asking, and started telling Zua what to do, as if she was already the wife. Zua remembered how quickly things shifted. Her father began choosing Lona's side in every little argument. He stopped listening to Zua. He brushed off her opinions like they didn't matter anymore. Family dinners turned into private meals between him and Lona. Their once close bond faded into silence. Zua started feeling like a guest in her own home. She had cried many nights, thinking maybe she was just being emotional or selfish. But now, hearing what her father said behind the flower wall, it all made cruel, perfect sense. Lona wasn't just a friend. She was part of a plan, and her father, he allowed it. Maybe he was hurting too. Maybe he was lonely. But instead of protecting Zua, he replaced her. He let someone else come in, take over, and slowly push Zua aside. Now she understood why her warnings were ignored, why he never believed her. Because this marriage was never about love. It was always about gain. Zua's eyes filled with tears again, not just from betrayal, but from the pain of realizing how easily she was forgotten, how quickly her father moved on, and how the woman who pretended to care had played them both, but not anymore. Now she saw clearly, and she was no longer afraid. As Zua stood in the shadows that night, listening to her father's shocking words to Lona, her heart was beating fast, but her mind was clear. What her father didn't know was that Zua had pressed the record button on her phone the moment she saw them sneak behind the flower wall. She had a feeling something strange would happen, and she was right. The phone in her hand had captured every single word, the laughter, the lies, the truth behind the wedding. She didn't react. She didn't cry. She just held the phone tightly, her hands trembling, but her spirit steady. She knew this was the proof she needed. But that was not all. Weeks before the wedding, Zua had already begun her own secret investigation. Something about Lona just didn't sit right with her. The way she talked, the way she moved, always trying too hard to impress, always trying to push Zua out. So Zua followed her instincts. When her father was asleep, Zua searched through the drawer where Lona had kept some documents. And what she found shocked her even more. Hidden under clothes and makeup kits were fake IDs, bank transfer slips from strange names, and a passport that didn't even carry the name Lona. Zua took photos of everything. She sent them to a trusted friend who was studying law. He helped her run a background check. That's when they found out that Lona was not who she said she was. She had been married before, twice, and both times ended in theft and police cases. She had changed her name, moved to another city, and was clearly running from her past. But now, she had targeted Zua's father, and sadly he fell right into the trap, blind and desperate for love, or maybe just greedy for business. Zua wanted to warn him, but every time she tried, he shut her down. So she stopped talking. She started planning, quietly, smartly. She kept all the documents safe. She backed up the files on a cloud, just in case someone tried to delete them. And tonight, as she listened to that final confession at the reception, she knew the time had come. The pieces were complete. She had the voice recording. She had the documents. She had the truth. Now, it was no longer about saving her father's heart. It was about saving his life and their family's name. Lona thought she had fooled everyone, but Zua wasn't just a girl mourning her mother. She was a daughter on a mission, and now the mask was about to fall. The wedding reception was in full swing. Music was playing, guests were laughing, and glasses were being raised for a toast. The new couple sat proudly on the decorated stage, smiling and waving. Everyone seemed happy, but Zua's heart was racing. She stood at the back of the hall, holding her phone tightly. She looked at the screen, took a deep breath, and gave the signal. Suddenly, the music stopped. The lights dimmed just a little. Then, the projector screen lit up behind the couple. Everyone turned to look, thinking it was a wedding video. But instead of love stories or dancing memories, a voice came through the speakers. It was Zua's. Calm, clear, and steady. "Before you celebrate this union, there's something you all need to see." Gasps echoed. People looked around in confusion. Lona's smile froze. Temmie's face tightened. Then, the video showed him, just hours earlier, behind the flower wall. His voice played loud and clear. "Don't worry, I only married you for the investment deal. We both win." The bride's soft laughter followed. The room fell completely silent. Then came the next clip. Documents, pictures, and proof of Lona's fake identity. Zua's voice explained how Lona had been running from her past, changing names, tricking people, leaving pain behind. People in the room started whispering. Others simply stared. Lona's hands began to shake. Her face turned pale. Temmie stood up quickly, trying to stop the video, but it was too late. Everyone had seen enough. His friends looked at him in disbelief. His business partners slowly stepped back. Some even walked out. Zua didn't speak again. She didn't need to. Her message was loud and clear. Everything she had tried to say before, everything her father ignored, was now out in the open. The truth stood tall in front of the lies. Lona tried to explain, but her words were lost in the noise of people's shock and judgment. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a reveal, a stage for the truth. Zua had turned the celebration into a moment of awakening. She didn't do it to shame her father. She did it to protect him, to stop the damage before it went any deeper. And as the video ended, all eyes were on Zua, a daughter who refused to stay silent, a young woman who chose truth over fear. She walked out of the hall without a word, leaving behind a stunned crowd and a broken mask. As soon as the video ended and the room fell into shocked silence, Lona stood up quickly, her eyes darting around the hall. Her smile was gone. Her face was pale. She tried to grab her purse and make a quick escape, walking fast toward the exit. But just before she reached the door, 2 security officers stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," one of them said firmly. Lona froze. She looked around for help, but no one moved. Her charm had disappeared. People were staring, whispering, recording with their phones. The same guests who had clapped for her earlier now looked at her like a stranger. She turned to Temmie, her husband, for help. "Tell them to stop. I'm your wife." Temmie, still in shock, stood slowly from his chair. His eyes were wide, filled with disbelief and confusion. He looked at Zua, then at the security officers, and finally at Lona. "Wait, what's going on?" he asked in a shaky voice. One of the officers replied, "We've been investigating her for months. Your daughter sent us everything. We have evidence of fraud, identity theft, and more. Temi tried to block them, still not fully understanding. No, wait! This has to be a mistake, he shouted, stepping forward. But one of the officers gently pushed him aside. Sir, please step back. Lona's mask completely shattered. She screamed, kicked, and begged as they handcuffed her. It wasn't supposed to go this way, she cried, but it was too late. Everything she had built on lies was crashing down. Meanwhile, the crowd couldn't stop whispering. Phones were recording. Some people started calling friends. A few reporters who had come for the wedding now had a breaking news story. Cameras were rolling. The whole world was about to know. Temi stood there, his heart broken, watching everything fall apart. The woman he had married just for a business deal turned out to be a criminal. His guests were leaving in shock, some shaking their heads in pity, others in anger. And Zua, she stood quietly at the back of the hall, tears in her eyes, but strength in her heart. She didn't enjoy the pain her father was feeling, but she knew the truth had to come out. She had warned him. She had tried everything. And when no one listened, she made sure the truth would speak for itself. That day, the wedding ended not with a kiss, but with handcuffs and truth. Temi was shaking with anger and embarrassment. As the guests continued to leave and whispers filled the room, he searched the crowd until he found Zua standing quietly by the wall. He marched over to her, his voice low but full of pain. Why, Zua? Why would you do this to me? You've ruined everything. My name, my reputation, my wedding. Zua looked up at him, calm but strong. She wasn't afraid. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. Instead, she spoke gently, like someone who had already cried all her tears. No, Dad, she said. I didn't ruin anything. You did. Temi frowned, confused and angry. What are you talking about? You destroyed our family the day you chose greed over grief, she said slowly, each word heavy. Mom died just a year ago. You didn't even let her memory rest. You pushed me aside and brought Lona in like she could replace everything. But she wasn't here for love. She was here to take what didn't belong to her, and you let her. Temi opened his mouth to defend himself, but nothing came out. Deep down, he knew she was right. He had ignored all the signs. He had called her childish. He had trusted a stranger more than his own daughter. Zua continued, her voice still steady. I warned you. I tried to talk to you. I showed you the truth, but you refused to see it. I didn't want this wedding to end like I didn't want you to be hurt, but I had no choice. I had to protect what little is left of this family. Temi looked down, speechless. For the first time, he saw his daughter not as a child, but as someone strong, someone brave. Zua reached into her pocket and pulled out her mother's locket. She held it tightly in her hand, as if drawing strength from it. Without another word, Zua walked past her father. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her heart was heavy, but her steps were firm. She had done what had to be done. The truth had spoken, and now it was time to move forward, alone but free. Zua walked out of the wedding hall with quiet steps, her face calm, her heart steady. There were no more cameras flashing, no more angry voices chasing her. She didn't rush, and she didn't look back. She wasn't walking away in shame or pain. She was walking away in peace. Everything had changed, but she knew she did the right thing. She didn't expose the truth out of hate. She did it out of love. Love for the father who had lost his way, and for the mother who would have never wanted to be forgotten so easily. As she stepped into the cool evening air, she touched the locket around her neck, the one her mother always wore. It felt warm, as if her mother's spirit was with her, proud and close. Zua smiled, not a big smile, but a quiet, knowing one. She had stood up for the truth. She had protected her family even when her father couldn't see the danger. Back at university, life slowly returned to normal. But Zua wasn't the same girl anymore. She was wiser, braver, and more focused. Her friends noticed it. Her professors saw it in her work. She had found her voice, and she was no longer afraid to use it. The pain of betrayal had made her stronger, not bitter. People gossiped about the wedding, about the video, about the arrest. But Zua didn't care. Let them talk. She knew what she had done was right. Her mother would have been proud. She didn't save the day in a loud, dramatic way. She saved it with courage and truth. Zua didn't need applause. She didn't need thanks. All she needed was that quiet strength in her chest and the wisdom her mother had passed on. That was enough. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll past. Like, share, and comment strength to show the world that truth always wins. And if you've ever had to stand alone for what's right, hit that follow button, because your voice matters, and your story deserves to be heard too.